Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and my God almighty, that was brutal watching, wasn't it? It just feels like such a familiar tale in these ties now. It's just the same thing every single time. We can't break these teams down. That is the story of it. Celtic play so much better in Europe. Well, I'm using the example as the group stage of the Europa League last year, when we have teams who are attacking us, when we have teams who are leaving themselves open to mistakes, and we have teams who are ultimately having a fast-paced game against us. When we're playing these teams that sit with these players behind the ball and they're draining the life out of it, Celtic don't get out of first gear. You know, we were strolling today. Not strolling in a good way, we weren't strolling through the game with ease, but you know, the players were walking, jogging. There was no energy for large portions of the game. There was bursts, there was spells of the game where we looked good. There was spells where we were piling the pressure on them. We had chance after chance. I think it was between maybe the 15th and 20th minute of the first half, and then a few other times throughout the game as well, where we looked really dangerous. It looked as though there was a goal in the offing. And then we just went back to, you know, 30 mile an hour, just at the speed limit, just staying like that throughout the game, and that suited Riga down to a T. The chances that we did make when we were in that position of the game weren't good enough, and it never really caused any sort of change on either side. You know, it was just a straightforward game plan from Riga to make sure we never scored, and it worked for them. Ultimately, the most important thing is we got there. El Yunusi with a 90th minute goal to send us through to the last round, the playoff round of the Europa League, but the performance is going to be the talking point. The performance was not good enough. And I think there was a real good example today of two possibilities. One, that minutes are catching up with certain players. And two, that there's players in that team who evidently need dropped, and it's criminal that some aren't getting started. And that's been the stuff we've always spoke about it this season. There's nothing new there. We know there's players in that team who should be dropped. Today, I think we've seen exactly why Scott Brown should be dropped. He offered nothing to that team today. At half time, honestly, it's like you're sitting there considering to get the cans out, because it's the only entertainment you're going to get, and especially in the middle of the park, we look so dry, we look so empty. The partnership of Edouard and Christie up front doesn't work for me, and that is a pretty evident thing, and a pretty obvious thing to say, because one's a striker and one's not. For me, it's just makeshift, make the best of what you've got, and it's just not for me. Honestly, I love the 3-5-2, it's what I want Celtic to play, but why do it with one striker and one central attack midfielder? Why not just go 4-2-3-1 at that point? A lot of things to pick up on. I'm not overly disappointed, because ultimately we went through, and I think we've got to give respect to the opposition who made it a really hard game, and we know that. It's just the same story every year. It just brings back so many memories of past Europa League ties. But we're not direct enough. We're not looking encouraging at times moving forward. Our full-backs or our wing-backs are scared to take on the man, bar Frimpong. We'll come on to him and the three things we've learned. And that, it's not just them. A lot of people are scared to take on their man. There's too many of these sideways, backwards passes at points of the game where we're needing a little bit of electricity through the team, and we're needing a wee bit of entertainment, a wee bit of flair, ultimately to shake up the opposition. We're not taking anybody on. We're not got any fear factor to us. It's quite annoying. But El Yunusi stepping up, getting the goal, Frimpong with the assist. He was the best player on the park for probably me. But there was a few things I would like to point out in the three things we learned. So Celtic are through. Let's get on to the three things we've learned about the 1-0 win over Riga in the Europa League qualifier. Okay, first thing that I wanted to talk about from very early on in the game, and a positive that I think might go overlooked by a lot of people, Nirbiton. I'm a big fan of Nirbiton now, and he's been someone on the channel over the past few years. I've always been kind of 50-50 on. I've never really pushed for him to get a start. I've always been kind of neutral to the position he was in the team. I wasn't caring that he wasn't a big part player, and I wasn't, caring when he was getting a chance. I was just very neutral towards him. Tonight, as I've been saying for the last few match previews, I would love to see Beaton start tonight. I'm very glad he did start, and I think it was a very good example of why he should be in that back three for the foreseeable future. I think him, Duffy and Ayer should be the three going forward. Yes, at times tonight, once again, the back three showed a lack of confidence. I think they're still willing to work with each other. There was moments where there was flashes. There was just it was just tiny moments like that. You're like, against someone else, there could be a goal coming from that. That was all three of them. But out of the three, tonight the one that stood out for me, the one that was the best, was Nir Bitton. I think right from the offset, his tackling looked good. He was getting ahead of his man well. He looked as though he had that yard of pace, which is something that you never really expect to see from Nir Bitton, a yard of pace. And ultimately, it was just, he looked really confident. And I like that. And it's something that Ayer and Julian in particular have lacked this season, a little bit of confidence. I think Abd El Hamid and Bitton are two players who are going to be competing with each other to be in that back three this season. I don't think any of them will become consistent starters, but if Bitton keeps up performances like he had tonight, I could see him getting that place. Maybe ahead of Christopher Julian if he doesn't get his act together when he comes back from injury. For me tonight, he just looked solid. I like him. I think there was times where his passing was a bit off, but he can work on that. I think he can get better with that. Bitton, for me tonight, one of the things we learned is he's a real shout for being one of the consistent back three players in the team. I don't know if many will agree with me. I think a lot of people would like it just to be natural centre-halves in there, and that's understandable. I think one of Lennon's problems with this 3-5-2 at the minute, and why maybe the performances aren't reflecting the quality of player we have, is because there's so many players playing out of position. You've got Forrest playing at a right wing back role that he's not used to. You've got centre mids playing at centre half. You've got central attacking midfielders playing up front. Sometimes you've got Forrest playing over on the left. There's players all over the place that are kind of just getting into these new positions and this new system. And maybe that is one of Lennon's problems. Maybe he should be going with Frimpong. For me, Frimpong should have started, but he should be going with players that are naturally in that position to start off with, and then grow into it with other players. But for me, Bitton looked great tonight. I think in the league he would have not a lot of problems, and I'd like to see him going in the team moving forward. Second thing we learned, Jeremy Frimpong has got to be the starting player. We touched on it there. He's got to be the starting right back, or right wing back. Tonight he came on and looked like he was the most energetic, the most up for it player in the park. He created the goal. More importantly, that was the main part of the game for him. But the minute he came on, it was a night and day performance from him and James Forrest. And I don't think Forrest was necessarily bad with his time in the park today. I don't think he'd done much wrong. I think it would be harsh to come out and criticise him heavily. But I think that Frimpong was really just, he offered a lot more for us. He was the most direct player in the park. And he was the only player in the park who was willing to take on their man. And when he did take on the man, nine times out of 10, he was beating them. And we were getting something from it. Frimpong's crossing as well, I think, right now is looking better than Greg Taylor's. Greg Taylor is struggling to beat the first man at times. I don't think Taylor had a bad game tonight, though. Let me just say that. Frimpong, I think, though, he's got to be in that team every week. He offers a completely different dimension when we're lacking. When we find ourselves in this position against these teams, when our back's to the wall, when we can't break them down, because we have got to go to training and work on how to break these teams down. I just think we should spend a whole week on it, because it's going to happen in the league, numerous amount of times. Every time we play a team away from home, or even at Celtic Park as well, 10 men behind the ball, we can never seem to break them down. But Frimpong, he kind of opens it up for us. He gets forward, he takes on his man, he creates a bit of space for someone, and then he's got good vision, he gets a ball in, and sometimes he's getting chances for himself. A good chance himself tonight to get a goal. Look, I like Frimpong, as does the vast majority of the Celtic support, but tonight I think is another reason showing Neil Lennon why he should be in there over James Forrest, and I don't think many of us questioned that in the first place, but tonight he was brilliant. It was brand new when he came onto the park. It was a different flair on that right hand side. And finally, the third thing we learned is it's going to be this is me picking this up, of course. I always say we learned. This is my perception of the game. Let me know the things you think you learned in the comments below. But Edouard is certainly not fit yet. I think he looked a shadow of himself tonight. Yes, Neil Lennon came out before the game today, or in the press conference yesterday, whenever it was, and said Edouard was ready. They assessed him in training. He looked fine. He looked ready to go. Nah, he looked absolutely useless tonight, I thought. And I don't like to be... I never consider myself one of those fans that go, Edouard looks lazy. I understand and I appreciate the type of player Odsonne Edouard is, and everything that he's done for Celtic over the last 2 years has always had that kind of comment at the background from Celtic supporters, or some supporters I should say, of Edouard is lazy. I've never been on that bandwagon, never. I think it's absolute nonsense. But tonight, I don't even think he looked lazy. I just think he looked all out tired. I think he looked like he needs a rest. And granted, we gave him a rest at the weekend, but he just... and I think part of it for me, I said earlier on in the video, is the fact he was playing up front with Christie. I just don't think that partnership worked at all. It just, for me, it looked as though they were both clueless to what was happening up there. And they both had individual chances in the game, never took them. But Edouard, I think, benefits either playing himself or playing with a striker like Albion Ayeti. And hopefully we'll see that soon. Whether or not Edouard starts at the weekend against Hibs is a big question now, because I don't think, by the performance tonight anyway, I don't think he looks ready for that. And we need to make sure his fitness is maintained for the fixture congestion coming up, because if we keep throwing him into the team now, it's just going to get worse with the amount of games we've got. So it's a really difficult situation we find ourselves in with Edouard and his fitness and whether or not he's fit to play. But ultimately we know how good he is. We know he's the best player, and all it takes is him to have one moment of magic and he can get a goal. Tonight it just looked as though that moment of magic would never come, no matter how much I wished for it in my head. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, all we have to do to stop this disaster is for him to step up and have a big moment. Just sitting there the whole game thinking of it, but the more time went on, the more I was like, he's not going to get that tonight. He's not going to get that chance. Tonight, he just looked like he was shattered, shell of himself. And hopefully he does come back into the team when he is fully fit and start bagging the goals. But then it's nonsense, the whole he doesn't look interested part. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I think it purely is just down to himself knowing that he's not quite ready. He's not quite 100%, I should say. Right, so that's the three things I think I learned from tonight's game. Of course, a murder of a performance out there. It was dreadful to watch, but we're through, and I'm happy with that. As long as we now go on to the weekend and take 3 points from Hibs, I'll have no complaints about the past week. A win with Livingston through to the last round of qualifying, and then a win against Hibs. It'd be a great week. I would take that. And yes, let's acknowledge that these performances aren't great. Let's take it with a pinch of salt. We're heading away from home in Europe for the first time this season. We still look as though, yes, we are in a sort of pre-season mode. But I think it's only a few games from full fitness now, and a few games from hopefully our best football. But we'll see what happens in the next few games. The tone of the next few three things we've learned videos will surely be a lot more telling. So we'll see then. But we're through. Hopefully the playoff round will be fun. Hopefully we're more entertaining than that. And ultimately, hopefully we're back in the group stage of the Europa League. If you have enjoyed, make sure that like and subscribe. All support is appreciated. Share out the video and everything else. And I'll see you all next time.